course, many people in Cape Breton are concerned that Central Nova Railway, Genie's in Wyoming, plans to abandon a section of the Cape Breton line. It once had a $2 million annual provincial subsidy that expires at the end of the month, and Sydney Victoria Liberal MP Mark Eyking was looking for federal support, and he asked the question, received a response. He's on the line with us this afternoon. Mr. Eyking, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Wendy.
Okay, draw out for people how you asked the question and to whom you asked it.
Well, just back up a bit. I asked the question, and when this thing was unfolding in the springtime, or when it was announced and the problems we were having, and I was quite involved at that time with the problems they were having out west, and I knew the minister was quite involved with keeping the rail lines going out west, and there was also an announcement in New Brunswick for money for their rail line. But anyway, I asked her the question in the House last spring: will the minister help, keep our rail line open? And at that time, Minister Raitt said, yes, I'll help the province and keep the rail line open. And we've seen she had a bit of a meeting there in the summertime. But I have not heard anything in the last few months on what they're doing. So maybe they're working behind the scenes or whatever. I don't know. So I asked a question, point blank. I said, can the minister tell us, give us an update on how much they're going to bring to the table and help keeping the rail line open? Because when I was at the rally Sunday, I think it was Saturday, we had the companies there, the 15 companies from Cape Breton, and all the employees were there, and it showed the importance of the rail. But it was also, of course, stated that we need these couple of years because of the potential of Sydney Harbour. So, people are getting nervous here, and I think, so leaving the rally, I knew I had to ask the question to see where it's all at, because all players have to be at the table. And I guess I wasn't totally shocked, because, we've been many things at Cape Breton have been taken away from us, and the Harper government has not been kind to us over the last couple of years. But that being said, it was very disappointing when she got up in the House and said, we're not bringing anything to the table to help keep the rail line open. And so, that was very disappointing. And I was hoping, especially her being from Cape Breton and the minister, which she has many levers that she can use to help this rail line keep it going. Her and the Minister of Infrastructure both could be doing a lot here, and just to flat out say they're not doing anything, it was totally unacceptable. And I think it's a big blow for us down here in Cape Breton.
Well, what levers do you see at the federal government's disposal to work on this issue?
Well, there's a couple I see, and as I mentioned before to you, I was quite involved with the rail issue out west on the grain movement. And at the end of the day, there was a bill put forward where the federal government, watchdog, they made sure that the grain was moving, especially on these short lines, the short lines that are out there up to 160 kilometers, which is a coincidence. It's about the same size as our rail, really. But what they put in is regulations forward that keeps the grain moving on these short lines to feed into the main line. So they do have jurisdiction over short lines where they can, make it happen that stuff gets moving. Now that's one part where I see them doing, but the other part is infrastructure. We know the federal government puts lots of money in national, infrastructure, whether it's airports, bridges. They've just announced $10 million for the New Brunswick rail line in New Brunswick, so it's not uncommon. I remember when we were in power, when the Liberals were in power, when the rail issue came up, I think around 10 years ago, through ECBC, we put $1 million in infrastructure. So it's not uncommon to help out on infrastructure and to help railroads. So they could have done this to the Build Canada Fund. It is still a national railroad that goes from Cape Breton all the way to British Columbia. So, and I think the third lever she could have had, which she has a lot of power, is dealing with especially CN and Marine Atlantic. Marine Atlantic is under her portfolio. Right now, all the intermodal freights is coming in on trucks that comes offloaded to Moncton. And plus CN, CN is making a lot of money, and because really the Canadians built that railroad many years ago, and I think the minister, if she had good relationships with CN, you'd say, look, we need this railroad for a couple of years. Can you go down there and help us out? Can you operate it even at a break even? We know the other people are leaving. It's a national railroad, and you know what? There's a big chance that you're going to have a lot of new freight coming in, and you will have that freight. But Minister Raitt is in trouble now with CN because of the fines that are set out there. So I'm guessing that there's not a great communication. And it's just that, they have levers. They could have done a lot to bring to the table, and I think they just refused to do it over the last few months. And I think it's very unfair because other rail lines are being taken care of by the federal government.
In the absence of federal participation, what do you see as a possibility for getting another firm in, or at least finding a way to keep the railroad operational and intact for the next couple of years?
Well, it's definitely it's a steeper hill we got to climb because infrastructure is going to be key. We know the province is still willing to bring the subsidy forward, and that helps with just keeping the rail going, the operational. But if for instance there was more money on infrastructure, because as was stated at the rally, we need to keep that infrastructure in place. We cannot let it be tore up, and I think if that money would have been there, so. If that infrastructure is not being dealt with, and there is places that need to be repaired, and as somebody mentioned at the meeting, there's some major turns in Iona and that need rail replacement. But the federal government could say, okay, we'll help. We need 2 years here, Wendy. We need 2 years to get us over this hump, and the provincial government can only bring so much money to the table. But at the end of the day, I think we could have brought CN forward. I mean, we could have made some deals with CN. It happens with Air Canada. When Air Canada wants to service all Canada, I mean, they get certain rights for landing fees and whatever. The Minister of Transport has a lot of power over these companies, and they could say, look, you just can't cherry pick certain parts of the country where you have a lot of rail and leave and ban in other areas. We expect you to have a bit of a national presence here, and I think that's where it all came down to it. And I believe we still got to push that, but. It's definitely going to be a challenge here now because, who's going to come to the table? We need a CN or CP to come to the table and to look for the future, but it requires the minister to be sitting right down with the president of CN and say, look, we got our problems out west and we're going to get through them, and now we got a problem in the east, but you guys are making lots of money because you got a national railroad that Canadians built. Now look. And plus, there's a letter that was out there. I mean, I know some people say it doesn't have merit, but there was a letter of intent from CN when it was a public company, when it went private, that they would help out. So I think all that could have been brought to the table, and say, okay, I think Cape Bretoners would accept, look, if in 2 years' time we couldn't turn it around and it didn't happen, the container business and many things didn't happen, well, we tried our best. Every level of government tried their best. Everybody tried to make it happen, and it still didn't. Well, we'd have to move on from that. But the shame of this is that, we have the next 2 years are crucial for us, and I think, the minister should have brought CN and many players to the table, and with the infrastructure, sweeten up the pot a bit here, and because it's going to be very difficult for the province to carry this on their own. But they're doing a good job, and they're bringing some people forward. Maybe they're going to be able to bring an operator in, and maybe we can pull this off. But I was hoping that the federal government will bring a good part of this to help everybody get through. I'm not saying it's impossible. We might be able to pull this off yet. But her totally refusing in the House to bring in, that the Harper government is going to bring anything to the table for the railroad. It's a setback for sure.
Well, Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Wendy. Take care.
That's Mark Eyking, and he is the Sydney Victoria Liberal MP, and this is CBC Radio 1 in Cape Breton.